Monotype.
Welcome to Creative Characters from Monotype, the show where we meet the people working at the intersection of type and everyday life. I'm your host, Kerry Squires, and today I'm speaking with artist and designer Kris Andrew Small. Kris's work is super courageous and full of movement, or as he describes it, a joyful explosion of colour, typography, pattern, and collage. His distinct expressive style has landed him clients like Nike, Apple, the M.I.A. and M.I.A. But Kris wasn't always designing for dream clients. He worked in advertising for most of his 20s, and while that was design adjacent, he didn't find it fulfilling. One day while he was camping in his favourite place, he made the decision to go all in on his art. And if it didn't work out, he had a plan B.
I was there in this place in the middle of nowhere. I think it's the most beautiful place in Australia. And I was just like, do you know what? If I have to go back to Sydney and do another day in advertising, I just can't. I absolutely can't. With no savings, with no anything. Late 20s was like, I am going to have an art career, whether it kills me or not. And if I don't, I'm going to live here, work in the supermarket and grow my own vegetables.
As you can guess, the art route worked out. And in this episode, I'll be talking to Kris about how he made this transition. Here to preview this episode with me is my co-host, Cadley. Hi, Cadley.
Hi, Kerry. Welcome to your first episode as host of Creative Characters. How did it go?
It was really fun. It helped that my first guest was Kris, as he's full of incredible and funny stories. The time difference between London and Sydney meant it was my Friday evening and Kris's Saturday morning, so he was actually talking to me from the future.
Hopefully he had some future wisdom for you.
He did offer a lot of wisdom.
So what about Kris's work stood out to you and what made you want to have him on the show?
So I followed Kris's work for a while. Overall, I'm just a massive super fan. But if we're talking specifically about his work, it's the fact that he creates what he wants to create without any limitations, which is not always an easy thing to do in the art world. He's also incredibly playful when it comes to his use of typography, and I really, really admire that level of confidence.
I think you were the first person to show me his work and to introduce me to Kris. And yeah, it's so vibrant and like just honestly like kaleidoscopic neon type. It's super crazy, and creating without any barriers is something we've been talking about a lot at Monotype for like the last year, and even kind of what you presented about at Adobe Max. So fun full circle moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what do you hope that listeners will take away from this episode?
Kris is an incredible storyteller, and especially in this episode is beautifully candid and open when it comes to talking about his career journey so far. He talks about the creative industry and offers lots of words of wisdom, such as his tree theory, which we chatted about. That's really stuck with me since we recorded.
Well, I look forward to learning about this tree theory and what it is. And with that, I'll hand it over to you and Kris for today's episode.
Hi, I'm your host, Kerry. I'm a designer here at Monotype, and I'm so pleased to welcome artist and designer Kris Andrew Small to the podcast today. Hey, Kris.
Hey, how you doing?
Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I've followed your work since 2017 or something, and your sort of amazing audacity to make your own rules and have such a truly authentic style is incredible. Would you mind just talking through your work and your style, sort of describe it in a sentence or two to our listeners?
Sure. I've never heard the word audacity used as a compliment. That was impressive.
It's definitely a compliment, honestly.
I never know how to describe my work, but if I had to sum it up in one word, it's movement in a way. And I think that then gives me freedom to try anything or to do anything as long as it comes under this like umbrella term of energy and movement and things like that. Because I don't think I was ever too intellectual about my style. I don't think I sat down one day and was like, these are the things I'm going to make and that's going to get me a career. I worked in advertising for a really, really long time and I was really frustrated. So probably a lot of the work was so energetic out of pure frustration.
It's reassuring, I'm sure, to a lot of our creative listeners to hear that. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. Kris, you've got such a distinctive style. How did you go about honing in on that and crafting it?
I think everyone has their own style, truly. Everyone kind of has an upbringing that has influenced them, a cultural heritage that has influenced them, a university that they went to, or a way of learning design that they are drawn to. And it feels like when you're in those things that like, oh, everyone must have the same influences. I remember when I lived in London and the Matisse cutout show was on, and like it felt like everyone referenced that. But I was like, that was one of 1,000 references in your life. And maybe that was a crossover point. So I think when you go to make your style, and certainly this is what I did, it's just literally a culmination of all the things in my existence that have led to it. I loved artists like Jean-Paul Goude and Keith Haring and Basquiat and Matisse and Andy Warhol and stuff like that. Big like pop artists and Murakami. And so I think they're my favorite artists, but you might have a completely different set of artists. So I think my work is minimalist in a weird way. Like it's maximalist, but it's very simple. There's not many elements in it. And I think that's the same with like a Keith Haring or an Andy Warhol and stuff. I also grew up in the tropics where like it's sunny most of the time and there's lots of weird plants that are different colors and we ate lots of fruit that's really bright. And so to me, color is a normal thing to do. If I had have grown up in London, obviously I'd be more drawn to like a muted color palette because that's the colors of London. So I think all of those things are unique for each person.
It sounds like almost the route to finding your style is through your life experiences and what's sort of ingrained in your DNA, essentially.
Yeah. And everyone has that. When you start every project with a bunch of references, you dilute that, because that becomes the reference point and you ignore the intuition and the DNA of what you've got inside you.
What do you think gave you the space to be able to hone in on that and really trust that that was essentially your style?
Your friends are a pretty good barometer in a way. Like I was making things all of a sudden and my partner would be like, that's good. And my friends would be like, can I buy that? And I don't know, I just was like, oh, okay, like something's clicked because this hasn't happened before.
Yeah. And
so you start to realize the people around you are liking what you're doing, honestly liking what you're doing, as opposed to just saying it because they're your friend. And I think that was a big turning point.
Yeah. And like massively having confidence and trusting your gut to go with what you enjoyed creating and what felt right.
Which I think happens naturally. Like I think people always say that they're like, oh, you had the confidence to do it. And I'm like, I think it was a survival like thing more than it was confidence. I was like, I have to make this work. I absolutely have to. And it's now or never. So I think it was that. And that's kind of how I feel again now. I'm like, I have to get to the next level. It's now or never. And I have that like survival instinct.
Let's go to typography.
What's that?
That's what we usually talk about on this podcast. I don't know what that is.
Oh, right. Okay.
No.
Letters and such.
We don't always have to talk about type, but obviously type is quite a big part of your work.
Sure.
What was your first sort of interaction with type? Did you hate all of the rules that come with it?
I always liked type design. I don't know why. I guess I was just like somewhat drawn to typography. I don't think it was like me rejecting the rules. I think I just didn't care when they were teaching us the rules. It wasn't like, ooh, I'm such a rebel. I was just like, I don't really know why we have to have them. If something's good, it's good. As much as I agree with the rules and I think they're good, I just think they are also super limiting. You don't have to like check before you design. You design and then check later. But I guess you need to know the rules in some context. And I think I am lucky in a sense that the rules exist in my head based on what looks good. And probably that's following some of the rules and I just don't know. I don't know how to say this without been sounding a dick, but I think I'm pretty good at composition. I would say that's one of my strong points. Yeah.
That's totally a huge part of it, is composition.
Yeah. If I can compose it well on a page, who cares if the type rules have been thrown out the window? I honestly swear to God, I still forget kerning and lettering. I don't know which ones. But I'm not living in a world where I'm doing that, so it's okay.
Yeah, you don't need to know that.
It's not that long ago that I didn't know what a monotype was, which is hilarious, given this.
Have you researched that since we asked you to go on the podcast?
Someone was like, you always use the same fonts and then you use monotypes. And I was like, Google's monotypes.
Back to the beginning. Did you sort of have a vision of what you wanted your career and life to look like when you first discovered that you loved art?
It's weird, because I think I did and then I forgot about it. I'm not like one of those people that was really creative as a kid. I was creative at Lego. I didn't have much Lego. Like all my friends were way richer than us. So I would just make things. And that was as far as my creativity kind of went.
Being good at Lego is a real skill.
I actually truly believe that. I think you need to have a pretty good level of creativity to do it. Yeah, I don't know. I think even in school, I was drawn to art and music. I knew I wanted to do something creative, but I don't think I was necessarily like a gun at any of them. That was what I was drawn to. And I also grew up in a very like suburban environment. There wasn't much design or culture or art or anything around me. I used to watch BBC, Keeping Up Appearances and things like that. That was like my cultural reference point. When I turned like 17, 18, 19 is when I really started to look outwards and I was really trying to find things. So I became like obsessed with kind of 80s New York and things like that. And so then that really inspired me. And I think around that time is kind of early Google Images days. And so I was just like, literally everything is now at my fingertips. So I would just make these super weird collages out of stuff. And I wasn't doing very well in school. So I started studying film 1 day a week as opposed to going to school. And I loved that because I think that was the first time I was around creatives that were doing it for a living. But film is so like, you have to work so hard and you have to kill yourself. And like, that's the only way to get ahead. And you won't have a social life and you won't have friends. And I was like, okay, cool. That's fine. I can do that. So that's probably where like my original work ethic came from, that and my parents. And then I studied graphic design. I wasn't fully sure what it was. I think I wanted to do fine art or directing or something like that. And I think I got pushed into graphic design because it was like, that's how you'll monetize a creative career.
That's exactly what happened with me. I loved fine art and all the artists I admired were doing abstract expressionism, like Rauschenberg. And then all my teachers were like, no, you need to study graphic design. You're going to get nowhere doing fine art. So it's nice to hear you had the same experience.
Yeah. And this is coming from because I grew up in a somewhat conservative place. It was just like, go and be an engineer or go and be a doctor or go and be an accountant because being an artist, you just won't make any money. Why would you bother? It's like, who wants to be happy? You just want to make loads of money and buy an Audi. That was the goal.
That's always the measure of success.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, well, what if I actually want to enjoy my life and do something I want? So then I moved to London when I was 20 and I very quickly got a job in advertising, which I didn't really even understand, but it was at this massive agency behind the Tate. And I would walk across the Millennium Bridge every day and I was like, I've made it. I'm 21 and I live in London. I can get free orange juice from the fridge whenever I want.
What position did you go in as, like a junior designer?
Yeah, very junior. I have ADHD, so I don't take on information very well. And I think, like, I obviously learned Photoshop, but I taught mostly myself. So I didn't know a lot of things, especially in InDesign. I was terrified to send things to print when I worked in advertising because I'd be like, something will be wrong and I'll get in trouble. But I was very much a junior designer. And then I went and did an internship at Cassette Player, which was this like very cool British fashion designer. She's still around, but that was like the first thing I guess I did.
You say that was fashion. Was that still doing graphic design printed stuff or was that clothing?
It was a bit of all of it. It was an internship, so I wasn't really designing anything. But her clothes were very like all over garment and she worked with M.I.A. and like all of these things. Yeah, I loved that world so much and I wanted to be in it. So I did that for a bit and I was always making work on the side and I had a clothing label that I started with my best friend and we made all these crazy all over prints and sold in Japan and stuff. Because I think I'd been so ingrained to think if I wanted to make art, I wouldn't make any money out of it. And the only way I would is if I was in graphic design at a design studio or whatever. So I was always making this weird, crazy work on the side, but I just didn't think it was something to pursue kind of thing. And I had like a bit of a music career at one point and people were like always more into the graphics than they were the music. And it would really frustrate me because I'd be like, no, I made this cool beat.
Can we just quickly talk about what kind of music it was?
Pop, but like alternative pop. Like we got signed to this like label in London and they were like, oh, we're going to make you the next Hot Chip. That was like the goal.
No way.
Yeah. We just weren't good enough to like become huge, but we had fun doing it and it was a good time. And then, so I was in London for years and I was just popping around freelancing in advertising agencies and I never really liked it, if I'm honest. Like I had very little creative control over anything, and I didn't like that. But I was so happy living in London, and I traveled a lot, and so I was like, I have got a good life, even if I don't like my job. Who cares?
Yeah.
Who does?
Yeah.
And then when I moved back to Australia, all of a sudden I was like, fuck, I'm on an island on the other side of the planet with no distractions. I can't just nip over to Spain to like hide the problem that I don't like my job. I worked in advertising and I got really good jobs. Like I was a in-house designer at the Sydney Opera House for a while, which I loved because I just love that building so much.
Yeah.
And I still didn't like it. And then I worked at this amazing agency called For the People. We rebranded Western Tasmania, which is part of a state in Australia, and it like won all these awards and everything. And I just didn't care. Like I felt nothing. Yeah. Because I was like, it's not my work. It frustrated me. And I think I was like, God, even when I'm in banging studios, I don't care. And then I just went camping in this place in the middle of nowhere. That's my favorite place on earth, which I'm not going to say the name of it because it's getting busier and busier. And
don't tell people about it.
But it's the most. I think it's the most beautiful place in Australia. I was there and I was just like, do you know what? If I have to go back to Sydney and do another day in advertising, I just can't. I absolutely can't. With no savings, with no anything. Late 20s was like, I am going to have an art career, whether it kills me or not. And if I don't, I'm going to live here, work in the supermarket and grow my own vegetables. That was plan B. And I was like, I think I'm okay with that. And I got an exhibition in Sydney in this basement, and all of a sudden I just got jobs, and one led to another that led to another. And then I got an agent in New York, and then I got an agent in London. And on the same day I got a job from Nike and Reebok. I went into like a panic attack because I was like, well, obviously I want to work for Nike. This is the biggest thing on the planet to me.
Yeah.
But the Reebok job was way better. And I was like, well, I can't do both. What world would it be that they'd let me do both? And then I finally was like, hi, Reebok, like I've got asked to do this thing. Hi, Nike, I got asked to do this thing. And they're like, we don't care. Do it.
Like asking their permission.
Yeah, exactly.
You were just immediately faced with these opportunities after going camping and not knowing what was going to happen.
It was really, really quick. And I think realistically, it was like a decade of different things and all for me to have a realization that that's what I needed to pursue.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily do anything different. I just was like, okay, I'm going to do it now.
It's interesting hearing about that specific turning point. And I'm sure like a lot of people have been in that position where they're like, I cannot do this anymore. I just want to make my own work, whatever it takes. But having the confidence in yourself and the belief in yourself to actually go ahead with it must be really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Sorry, it just reminded me then when you're talking about coming back to your own style and realizing you're doing the right thing. Are you able to just talk about that a bit and how that felt?
I was really insecure. Like I had my first show when I was 30 and I was like, what are you doing?
You felt like that was really late.
In hindsight, I'm like, my God, I wasn't old at all. But at the time, I remember thinking, my goodness, you've missed the boat. And I think that's a societal issue, that it's 30 is so young in the grand scheme of things. And I think it's absurd that you're in your parents' care till you're like 20 and then you have one decade where you're relevant and then you're not. That's the dumbest thing. And I think that like we live long now. You can be relevant in any decade and do whatever. But I still am a bit insecure. I think I've got a lot to prove by certain ages, which is maybe in my head or whatever. But
I think that's just the human condition.
You're so right. But in my head, I was very much like, oh my God, 30, why are you trying to be an artist now? Why didn't you do this in your 20s? But there's like a theory with queer people that we have a delayed adolescence because you mask your personality for such a long time that you then have to relearn yourself, which delays you a little bit. So I think that's one of the things. I think also just everyone has their own time where it makes sense for them to do what they do. And for me, that was the right time. And I guess I was at a turning point in my life where I'm like, I make this work, or I do really go and live on like the countryside and have like a simple life. And I think I'm okay with that.
Obviously, you had a path that led you through feeling really frustrated at these jobs that led you to doing your own thing. And, you know, if you hadn't have done that in your 20s, you wouldn't be doing this now. So
yeah, but it took a while to realize that, like, I think because I left advertising somewhat resenting it. And so in my head, I was like, you've wasted all of this time, you idiot. And I don't think that was fair on myself. The first year, I was just so driven to make it work that I don't think I had time to think.
How did you start? What were the steps that you took to wake up every day and make the work that you want to make?
I used to take all these photos of people in Sydney and make collages of them. And every morning I'd like organize them with just people from Instagram. I wouldn't say I'm shy, but I was a lot worse than at just talking to people I didn't know.
Yeah.
And every morning I'd almost cancel the photo shoot because I was like, I can't go and take photos of this person and have chit chat. Like, it would really stress me out. But I'm like, I don't know, there's just like a layer beneath my consciousness that would just like force me to go and do it.
Yeah. It sounds like in your head there was no other option.
Yeah, it's that. I don't mind to fail. I don't want to, but I'm like, I just have to go and do it. Otherwise, I'm going to sit here and be frustrated, and that's worse.
Totally. Speaking of that, it'd be good to talk about your sort of relationship with social media as an artist. Was that happening as you were starting to go and photograph people? How did you start putting your work out on social media?
Again, I just was like, I'm just going to do it. I missed the wave where you could get 100K followers without really trying. I think I got like 2 months of that, which gave me a bit of a following.
Yeah.
And then I got on It's Nice That, and that opened a bunch of doors, and which I think it still does. I still think It's Nice That is such a good platform for people. Social media is a tricky business, I think. Let me tell you my tree theory first.
Okay.
Then we'll delve into it. So I go to the gym. It's like one of the only things I'm on time for, weirdly. And I'm normally
Is this like every day?
Most days. I go there and I wait for my friend in the foyer of the gym, and right outside the gym is this beautiful tree. And often, like, I'm sitting there waiting for him and I'm on my phone, as we do.
Yeah.
I was like, what am I doing? Just looking at my phone all the time. What is the point of this? And so I stare at the tree now.
Oh.
I'll like use my phone for a couple of minutes, and then I'll stare at the tree for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, which one do you feel better after doing? It sounds really like hippie.
No, I love this.
The tree really makes me happier. And I think social media is a super important thing in our world, but I think it's become the tip, like, of the pyramid, where it's like, that's the thing that's the most important thing on the planet.
Yeah,
it's not and I just think it's one of the things out of 1,000 things we can do in a day. And we just have to remember that a little bit again, that it's not the entire world. And I'm really positive towards social media. I think it's still a really good thing. I think people are a bit neg on Instagram these days, and I feel like it's different, but I feel like I've met so many people through Instagram, and I have so many friends through Instagram, and I've been fortunate to travel a lot for my work. And then that's how I've met a lot of people. And I don't know, I think I've, for myself anyway, built like a very good community that I feel really supported by. And then I think I've just got a bunch of friends who are artists and designers and things like that, that I think, like, once you're my friend, that's it. Like,
yeah,
literally I'm there forever. Like, you can't get rid of me. So I think I'm like constantly checking with everyone to just like, you know, and I think that's a really strong community. And some of those people I've known from like way before Instagram, and some of those people have been people I've met through Instagram or just met through jobs or whatever. And
it's so nice to hear that, because you're saying, you know, when you were growing up, you're sort of in a neighborhood that wasn't particularly creative, and you didn't have much access to cultural things, and you weren't able to speak to those kinds of people. Whereas now you've got this huge community that you feel really supported by, and that's great. Yeah, I was going to say, as creatives who are trying to establish themselves on Instagram or TikTok or any other platform, how important is that to making yourself successful as an artist now? I
think the work is still the most important thing, because if all these apps go tomorrow, if you have nothing after that, you have nothing. There's so many apps. I'm on Red Note now, which I'm loving. There's Rodeo, which I really like.
I think I downloaded that the other day. Yeah, I'm
into it. I'm into Rodeo. I really don't like TikTok. I don't think TikTok is good for the planet.
It's been interesting to see how artists and designers have started trying to use it.
It just doesn't work somehow, and I don't know why. I don't know a single fully proper artist that's doing that well. That's probably not true. I'm sure there's a few, but I just think, like, as an artist, you're going to have to evolve 20 times in your life. But that doesn't mean you have to adopt every new thing. Just because something is new doesn't make it better than what was before.
You're based in Sydney, Australia. What's the creative scene like there?
I'm a huge advocate for Sydney. I think Europe's hugely part of me, but I am also just a hippie that loves the beach and loves sunshine and mangoes and watermelon. And I think I'm really happy in really big cities and really happy in the middle of nowhere where there's lots of nature. And I feel like Sydney is a middle ground of that. It's got beaches, it's got the harbour, it's very natural, it's very beautiful, but it's a big city and it's like really industrial in a lot of places. And I don't think it has the best creative scene on the planet by any means, but I do think it has a very good creative scene. It's a big city. It's like LA. It sprawls. So it's often hard to like find your people, but I think it's getting better. And I think after COVID and all these things, I hate to say the C word, I think the Sydneys and the other B cities around the world, like the cities that people know, but they're not like a London or New York, I think they've had a bit of a revival. And I think Sydney's one of those. When I moved to London, everyone was doing it. And now people aren't. They're staying in Sydney and they're like starting agencies and things like that. So there's been a revival of that. And I think Sydney has a good scene. For example, I did a talk last November at it's very like a Nicer Tuesdays types thing called Hopes and Dreams. It was only supposed to be 50 people and 150 people showed up. It was the first time they ever did it. And then they did a second one and it was supposed to be 200 people and 500 people showed up. Odd that things grow this quickly in this day and age, like a real life thing. My agents are overseas. Most of my projects come from all around the world. So I feel really connected. And then it's nice that I have this place that's a bit more chilled than a bigger city. I live in a neighborhood called Surrey Hills, which is kind of like Soho, I guess, just beneath the main part of the city. It's a lot of old warehouses that have been converted into apartments or flats, units, whatever. But it's got a lot of old like Victorian era houses. Sydney's really hot. So at one point they thought, we need to cool it down. We'll plant like a shit ton of trees. In the inner city, they planted so many trees. So although it's in the middle of the city, it's incredibly green and lush, and they're very strict around the heritage rules. So they're not building big, ugly buildings. Everything's old and beautiful, and not everything, but a lot of things are, and they're very aware of that. And I can walk into the city. I'm really close to Thai Town, which I love, and Chinatown, but I'm a 10-minute drive to the beach, which is for me the most important thing.
Yeah. As somebody that also loves the beach and the ocean, it's wild to me that you can be in a really thriving city but also drive 10 minutes and go to the beach.
Yeah, I know that it's a huge privilege to have the beach, but I also I feel like my neighborhood's quite diverse because, you know, in a city there's people from everywhere. It's like a huge Asian immigration, Philippines, Thai, Vietnamese, and I love that. I'm more comfortable in an environment like that. Lots of Europeans living here, lots of Brazilians. I don't think Sydney is a perfect city, and it has a huge housing crisis, and it's wildly expensive to rent or to buy anything. So that's a huge problem, and I very much don't agree. And I feel as if the government is doing very little to address that problem, which I don't love. And I'm very grateful that I have like a external career that takes me around the world and is having me speak to people from around the world on a daily basis-ish. So I don't feel like I'm on the other side of the earth, which I'm very aware that I am.
Yeah. Well, you are, but we're obviously all connected, and everyone's sort of moving to different places. You don't need to be in the Londons and the New Yorks anymore.
No.
Okay, so let's talk about your sort of relationship with music and design. I know that you've worked with M.I.A. I'm very, very jealous. How did that come about?
The Instagram is how that came about.
I knew it.
So
I knew it.
I love her so much. I think she's probably one of the people I have looked up to for the longest and the most. Like, I think what she does and has done is just beyond.
Yeah.
Like, she's on another level. I was probably 18 or 19 when I first heard A Ruler, and then a little bit older, obviously, when Carla came out. So it's, I think 2022, her last album came out, and it had been out for like a few days, and I was just obsessed. Feels like Carla all over again. I love her.
Yeah.
I'm super into it. I was in my studio and I was making all of this weird work, and music's always inspired me like a lot. And I think deep down, I wanted to be a pop star.
Yeah, me too.
It's just, I mean, it's just not my strong point, and it
will happen one day, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, so I was in my studio. I was meant to go and see Tame Impala. They were playing, and I was like, I just don't want to go. I don't know why. Like, I love Tame Impala. I have a ticket that costs silly amounts of money, and I just want to sit here and listen to this album and make weird work.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And then I put this animation that I made, like roughly inspired by, but not like, I'm going to make something like specifically M.I.A. And I put it out, and my friend who had worked on the album reposted it, and she saw it and started following me. But this is at like 3 a.m. I had a bad habit then of checking my phone all night. And I checked it and I was like, what? Like just seeing
some
like
weird
M.I.A. is following
dream.
you. Yeah, I was like, that's so odd. And so I obviously was immediately awake and sent some message like, I love you, not in a weird way. And then she was like, oh, I love your work. It's the best thing on the internet. And I was like, you're the best thing on the internet.
This is all happening at 3 a.m.
Which I truly believe. And then she's like, oh, I'm doing Boiler Room in 3 days. Do you want to do the poster?
No way.
And so I was like, yes, like, of course. So I went to the studio super early in the morning, made the poster and sent it to her. And she's like, yeah, I love it. It's amazing. I need to make the set better now. And I was like, okay, you don't need to rise to anything. Like, literally, whatever you do is perfect. That was wild. And then she's like, do you want to do a visualizer for each track on the new album? So I just spent the next kind of 3 weeks to a month just like animating like a crazy person. And I was so happy. It was like the ultimate validation.
That must have been so surreal, but obviously so incredible. And it's really lovely to hear that you were just working directly with her.
No, yeah. I mean, her manager was there, but like it was very chill and it's very her. And then I went to Bali and I met her, and she's as you imagine, you know, like she's just genius and she's just kind of like doing her thing. And
how did you feel before you were going to meet her?
I was pretty nervous, but I was weirdly okay, I think. When she said my name, I was like, it's so weird that you know my name. And then she's like, do you want a coconut? And I was like, yeah. And then someone kind of like brought me a coconut with a straw in it. And I was just like sitting there drinking it, being like, this is so very surreal.
So when you were making the visualizers for each track, what was your process? Was it sort of the tracks on repeat?
Yeah. I mean, I was doing that anyway. It's that was,
yeah, of course.
You know, I think doing is my process. Then you figure out as you go. I did an interview the other day, but I was asking the questions. I do this little series called Small World.
I have seen that on your Instagram. Yeah. I was going to say, like, you're the expert. Why am I interviewing you?
I'm very new to it, but I just wanted to talk to my friends about work and the cities they live in. I'm trying to get it funded so I can do it in real life. That's the goal, because at the moment it's on Zoom.
Okay, anyone listening, if you want to fund Kris's podcast, please do it.
Please do. And I asked him a question. I was like, what's your favorite project? And he goes, my career is my favorite project. And I was like, that's genius. And I feel the same with my process. I'm like, I don't think I have a process. I think everything I do in life is my process. So by the time I actually make work, it's because I've done 50 things in the day that's led to that. So I work super, super fast.
Yeah.
Which is another reason I liked M.I.A, because she's like really fast.
It sounds like it's much more intuitive rather than trying to delegate, or it's almost like having a process as you overthinking it. Yeah. You should just do it without thinking too much.
Yeah, because that's when I think you make the best work. But again, I have a really strong work ethic. So that's going like, go and work for 700 hours to make sure you make the best thing. And it's taken me a long time to go like, yeah, you have to just allow it to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a huge process. I guess it was probably like me just loving her work for so long, being like, how can my work fit into that world and make sense? And how can I make things that I think are really cool? And it's funny, I broke my computer halfway through, like, because I work so fast and when you're animating, and I think I was working on them all simultaneously, and my computer just completely died and I had to buy a new one halfway through. And I don't want to say the word manic because I was quite chilled, but the situation was relatively manic in a sense that it just consumed my life.
Yeah, it sounds manic in like the best way.
That definitely happens with a lot of projects where I'm just like, it consumes my entire existence. That's the only thing I kind of do and care about for like however long it is.
I think you mentioned earlier that you have ADHD, and obviously there's a sort of hyper focus element, I think.
Yeah, everyone's different, and mine was very lately diagnosed, which is frustrating because I think had it been more earlier diagnosed, I would have done a lot better in school and things like that.
Yeah. How was yours diagnosed, if you don't mind me asking?
I had I wouldn't say a panic attack. I had like an anxiety attack, which really shocked me because I'm pretty balanced. I know that's a weird thing to say about yourself, but I handle stress well. I can take on a lot of work. I can deal with it. It's fine. And I don't know. I had a bunch of shows in a row, and I think it was just too much. And it was like too much energy. And I went to Bangkok for 4 days by myself on the way home from Europe. I love Bangkok. I've been loads, and I just couldn't leave the hotel room. Any noise freaked me out. All I could manage to do was like literally loll around the hotel room in like a kind of zombie state. And it was so out of character. Like it was so weird for me. And it really freaked me out because I'm just not like that. So I thought I'd just like burnt out and had an anxiety attack essentially.
Yeah.
And so I saw a therapist. It's a lot of an overshare, but I think it's good for people to know. I went to a therapist. I explained everything that happened. I was really anxious and all of these things. And she's like, don't think you have anxiety. And then she's like, has anyone ever asked you if you have ADHD? And I was like, well, people say it all the time, but I just, like whatever. That's what people say.
Yeah.
And she's like, I just want you to do 3 tests. I did the first one and she was like, oh my. And then we did the second one. And then she started asking me these questions and it felt like a horoscope in a way. She was like asking me all these questions about how I exist. I'm like, have you been sitting in my apartment watching me?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how you know. It was super weird. And I started crying because I was just like, I don't understand how you know this.
Yeah. But also probably a sense of relief that.
Yeah, that's why I was crying. It wasn't from a place of sadness. It was just very strange. And then we did another test and the final one that you do and they tell you have it. Yeah, it was kind of wild because it just like explained so many things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think it's a negative thing in my life now. I really don't. But I think it was I was super disruptive in school. They just used to kick me out because I couldn't focus. I couldn't finish things in a way that other people could. I like to talk about it because I think we live in a bit of a world where everyone thinks like, oh, everyone has ADHD or whatever. And I think it's misrepresented. And I think I told my parents and they're like, you don't have that. Not in a mean way. I love my parents to death. But I think their perception of ADHD is someone, and this isn't my opinion. A general opinion is people think you're all over the place, you're a bit unhinged, you can't focus, you're loud, you're annoying.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not those things, but my brain is so all over the place a lot of the time, but it's very internal. It was weird. In the beginning, I felt really like I was like, oh, I'm broken. I knew there was something wrong with me fundamentally. And now I've had confirmation, which I've spoken to about with a bunch of my friends who've been diagnosed. And they had the same thing. They had like a massive anxiety attack that led to the being diagnosed and then felt like a broken person for a month after. And then now like, it's a good thing.
So are there any projects that are coming up that you're super excited about at the moment that you can maybe talk about?
There's one I'm really excited about in Sydney. It's a HIV charity called ACON. They've done a lot of HIV AIDS awareness campaigns and different things. It's a very good charity. And I've done a campaign with them, which I'm really excited about because I feel like I hadn't done a really classic type. I don't know if that's the right thing to say, like a really like type-led me thing for a while. And I think with this, it's like a very factual, information-led HIV awareness campaign. So I'm really excited about that because I think it's like turbo me. And I like things like this, when you look back at artists that I admire and you see they've done projects like this, I think they're always my favorite. And I don't think it's my most groundbreaking piece of work I've ever done, but I feel like it's culturally really important. Yeah. And like obviously being queer is always like a theme throughout my work. So that it's a nice link to that again, because I've not really done anything in the queer space for a little while. So that's nice. Yeah.
So when you're making artwork in your studio, what's the atmosphere like? Like what's the setup like? Do you have music on all day? What are you drinking?
I drink coconut water like a fish.
Okay.
I love coconut water so much.
I agree with
so
you.
There's a lot of that going on. And it's really good and cheap here, so I drink it a lot. That and water. It's chilled. I mean, I've always shared studios, but now I have my own studio. It's just me. I've got like a little shop, very little shop.
Yeah.
That used to be a dog grooming shop until I moved in. So all these dogs walk past and freak out because they think they're getting a bath.
Do any of them just sit at the window when they go past?
Couple, not less now, but in the beginning, yeah, they used to just, one would always try and come in, like a very cute Labrador. That was nice. I love dogs, so it was a good thing. But I listen to music a lot, but I also just watch things like interviews. I like to listen to interviews. Like I guess I watch lots of Nicer Tuesdays and things, but then I also just watch like variety actor on actor, like interviews of musicians or whatever.
What would you tell the version of Kris that grew up in this little town with no real access to like all these incredible creative things? What would you tell him?
It's a good question. I would have told him to go and learn another fucking language. Firstly, I would have told him to go and learn to surf and skate because that becomes a lot harder when you're like not 11. So I'd firstly be a little angry. Yeah, I'd be a little angry just off the jump. But then I think it's going to sound so cheesy. I'm trying to like frame it in like the most uncheesy way, but I feel like
it was a bit of a cheesy question on my part.
I'd just be like, what you think you'll be when you're older is exactly what you'll be. Sometimes I see myself now and I'm like, I swear I predicted this.
Well, that's manifesting.
Like it's really weird. Yeah, it is 100% manifesting, but like it really is what I thought would happen.
Yeah.
And I think so many things like that in life, they just are up to chance. When M.I.A. happened, I was like, this makes sense. And when I got like an Adidas collection, I was like, obviously I was super excited and grateful, but I was like, I think I've been like working towards things like this for like such a long time. I feel like I earned them. My parents always told me, if you want something, you have to earn it. No one's going to give it to you. So I think most of the things I've got, I'm like, you did earn these things.
And somewhere you imagined it and you kind of knew it was going to happen at some point.
Yeah. I'd say that to any young person. I'm like, you just have to work for the things you want in life. You really, really, really do. I'd also just be like, focus on the positive of things. Just keep going forward. And that's all you can do. Even like if you're not creative or whatever, you can't focus only on the negative all the time. Like that's also a waste of life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I don't mean like don't stand up for things and these things are super important and don't forget about them and whatever, but you just can't live in a constant state of the world is ending, everything is fucked. Like that's not helping anything. It's just making it worse. So there's a lot of things that are important and people deserve the same rights everywhere and they don't deserve to be treated differently and all of these things, but you also just have to go like, I have to enjoy the situation I'm in as well, because not enjoying it is not fixing the problem either.
Yeah, absolutely. So, or else it just becomes an echo chamber, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Everybody's radiating negativity.
Yeah. And that's how things get worse, I think. So I'm really trying to be aware of everything, while also trying to stay in some form of positive mindset, or at least projecting that.
Kris, thank you so much for joining us on Creative Characters. It's been wonderful chatting about your incredible work and process. So please come back soon.
I will. Thank you so much for having me. I've had a ball and thank you for all your wonderful questions. I appreciate being asked. It was fun.
To check out Kris's portfolio, go to krisandrewsmall.com. That's KRIS andrewsmall.com, or head to Instagram at Kris Andrew Small. Thanks for listening. If you like our show, please subscribe, rate us, and share us with a friend. Creative Characters is brought to you by Monotype. It's produced by Christopher Olin and Mia Sullivan. We'll be back in a couple weeks. See you soon.